I am recording now. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and we will go over some of the steps in this year's process. You guys received this infographic in the packet that went out on Friday. This year, there's a few changes and upgrades to the succession planning process. We really have 3 essential steps to do, and I'll go over some of the details through the packet in just a moment. The first step is doing the talent mapping. So we've upgraded to an 11 square from the 9 square that if you did this process last year, you're probably familiar with. The 11 square adds 2 new boxes that allow you to put a person in if they are approaching retirement and are not looking for a lot of new or different things to do, but have really reached where they're wanting to go in their career and actually looking to develop their successor more likely. So there's an ability to put that there because that is a different plan. There's also another box for somebody who is too new to rate, and that's really for those who are probably in their position around a year or less, maybe a little bit more, but are really still just learning to become competent in their work, and perhaps you don't have enough information to really rate them at this point in time. The talent mapping you can do now, between now and whenever you might have a conversation with your direct reports in formal leadership positions. So as you can see there, that's really the first step. And when we go through the packet, I'll remind you guys a few tips on how to use that 11 square. The second step in this year's process is to have that one-on-one conversation. It's really the same as last year, but we're going to integrate that in the mid-year conversation process. So hopefully, as you talk about goals for the organization and how those are going, you can also integrate this conversation as well. Hopefully, a little bit less to do on your list overall, but an important conversation to have when you've already scheduled some time together. There's still the same tools in the packet on preparing for the conversation and some guides and things to think about as you enter that conversation and then come out of it hopefully with a development plan. Remember, those one-on-one conversations are something that is one of the keys to succession planning because we often don't stop and take that opportunity to really hear about someone's aspirations in their career, what they want to do, or changes that they may want to make. So that really gives us that opportunity to do some of that we haven't always done in the past. The third step is creating the development plan. This is something that's between you and your direct leader reports. It's that one-pager that you are hopefully familiar with from the first time last year when we launched this program that we used. Looking for 1 to 2 key goals and activities that you will use to really create a step-by-step process, check in on, and make sure the goal is being accomplished. You complete the plan on the template provided, and you do not have to turn that in. That is something that you keep and work on. The final step that you'll want to do is go ahead and fill out in the packet once you have had the conversation and with all of your direct reports that are in a formal leadership role. You'll want to fill out the advancement readiness tracking sheet and go ahead and send that in to the nursing leadership development at vanderbilt.edu email address, the same as we did last year. And that one is so that we can continue to create a master really pool of talent and where everybody is, so we can help to it can help to inform future programs where we have formal leadership development, as well as really working on getting the organization towards a succession management model where we are really able to help planfully create succession models in different areas and look across the organization to do so. I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen share, so bear with me for a moment here. just take a few minutes to review the packet that you received via email. There were a few of these sheets that were sent in the packet in Word, so that way you guys can more easily use them to fill out on your computer if you need to. The nursing succession planning program is largely the same as it was last year in forms of steps to take, but we're going to go ahead and add all the steps to every level of leadership. So you can see here that these items are assigned to managers through the executive CNO level. And that is a little different than last year because managers do not have to complete all steps on their direct reports that were at the assistant manager or CSL level. But this year we are asking that all steps are completed on every level. So that would include, the difference there is that would include the development plan and completing the advancement readiness tracking sheet. So you can see here the key dates. We went ahead and aligned with the mid-year conversations for this year, trying to help see if we couldn't streamline your to-do list and also do this very important part of succession planning. The first step of completing the talent mapping of all leader direct reports in the 11 square. That's between now and when you have that mid-year conversation with that person. Officially, mid-year conversations according to HR start on January 18th. But of course, if you have one planned for later in the month or in February, you can do it as needed. The next step is to really plan that one-on-one developmental and career planning conversation. And again, you do that during your mid-year conversation with your leader direct report between January 18th and March 1st is when the deadline HR has set. So we're going to go ahead and align with that deadline as well. The next step is to complete that advancement readiness tracking sheet once you have completed all your conversations and mapped everybody, and you send that in via email. Again, that developmental plan should be completed during that conversation. You might not have the full plan completed, but you want to make sure that by the time you end your mid-year conversations and you have those wrapped up, that you do go ahead and have that on file as complete so you can begin to execute on it. Again, sending the advancement readiness tracking sheet in and then executing on the developmental plan over the coming year and helping find creative ways and programs, formal, informal opportunities for those leaders to participate in. This is the new 11 square. And this, you can see there's just two placeholder boxes for those sections that I mentioned, the 2 new to rate and the approaching retirement box. As you look across here, if you remember, there are 2 axes, the first one being potential and the other one being performance. When you think of performance, you want to go ahead and think about the ability of the person to meet their goals, to perform at the expected levels. And if you remember the first, let's see here, the first few bullet points align with the performance metrics, and then the last few bullet points align with the potential measures as you go along and try and see where they are along each axis. And our tip for when we started this out was to go ahead and look at the mid-level of each and then go up from there and kind of find where your person really maps out and being very honest, and so that they can find then the opportunity that might match up to where that you see that they have for growth when you're planning their developmental plan. And remember, it's really helpful to take one bullet at a time and to place where a person lands on each bullet and then kind of find what box is most consistent with both their performance and potential. This is not something that is an exact science. You're trying to give feedback And also look for yourself, as your leader hopefully does this with you, of where you are and then where you potentially have to go. So it's a meant to be a very constructive exercise. You can use as references for the performance and potential axes our annual evaluations that were done in the fall or late summer, early fall. Also attached in the email you received were the AONE nursing manager competencies and the nurse executive competencies. And both those give you some good comparisons, and you could even go through the exercise of filling those out if you haven't recently or wanted to go ahead and go through a set of those and rate yourself on those to see where a person might lie. So that's a good reference point to look at each of these factors. The next page in the packet is a blank one of the 11 square in case you want to use that as a side-by-side tool to map people out, if that's helpful. As we scroll down, the Pathway Conversations tip sheet is the same as it was last year. Really what we are hoping to do here is to give you some of those steps and things to think about as you prepare for your conversations, since we don't always have these type of conversations and set aside the time and space to open up this type of dialogue with our direct reports. Really listening for those key things that a person might be thinking about their career, sometimes reading in between the lines, active listening, and sharing different perspectives on strengths that a person has, and then documenting the results of that conversation. And also being available and trying to find out what experiences the person might want to have or can grow in. So this is really the key to making the succession planning process work. The next page in the packet are some ideas for developmental opportunities. We wanted to make sure that you guys still had that list of things that we may think of on a regular basis as developmental opportunities, but also some of those ones that aren't as top of mind that will still often help tremendously in growing a person or helping them reach some goals that they have in their career. Again, shadowing opportunities, we don't always take advantage of stretch assignments, membership and work in professional organizations outside Vanderbilt, and coaching or consulting with others. So we learn a lot when we try and teach ourselves as well, and that can really hone in our skills. So sometimes taking on a mentee or protege in the case of coaching to help them work on some skills really does help our ability to be a teacher of things as well. So some ideas in that section for you to look at. The next page is the Leader Development Plan. This is one of the documents that you received in a Word format in the email, so that way you can go ahead and fill it out and make it work for you. You can see there it also summarizes the conversation that you have when you have the developmental conversation, where you fall in the 9 square mapping, or the 11 square in this case, and then those developmental actions. Really, you only need 1 or 2, especially if you want to be able to provide enough attention to them to make them rich. But those are something that you have then to hold yourselves accountable. Finally, the Advancement Readiness Tracking Sheet is the last page, and this is the one as you complete all your direct reports, conversations, mapping. This is where you fill them out. This is the other document that was in Word, so you can fill out your direct report leader's name, the current role they're in, where they fell in the 9 square, what their interests are in their career, if they are ready at any time in the near future for advancement, any developmental steps that are key, and any notes you want to make about that. We are working to get these in a master file for the organization, so that way we know what programs to develop to target, where people want to grow and learn more, as well as looking at that pool of how do we really create rich succession management across the organization. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop my share. That is the quick overview for this year's packet. And I think we want to go ahead and open it up to Q&A. Kevin, are you able to see?
Yes.
Okay. So you guys have the ability to raise your hand if you're on via your computer, or you can type in the Q&A box, and we are monitoring those for questions coming in. Give it a few minutes for you guys to process and find those buttons on your screens. Okay, I've got one question, Donna Nolan. Her question says, should this be done on all staff members at the mid-years or those we think are potential leaders? These are just done on those of your direct reports who are in formal leadership positions. So, Donna, that would go down to your CSLs, but you do not have to do that on other staff. So everybody, the goal is to have talent mapping and a plan done on everybody who is in a formal leadership position. If that answers that, I hope. Let's see. Okay. Paul Raymond asked, do educators need this process completed? It is a good thing for educators to do. However, the competencies and the way the current 11 square was created was not based on what is asked of them in their area. So there's a little bit of a different, they would have probably a different type of 11 square. So that's probably a future build for us. Now, if you do have educators that report directly to you and you want to have a developmental conversation, you can surely use one of those. But the that particular 11 square for mapping that, mapping them as well as the competencies from AONE aren't really made for their role at this point in time. So that's something that we still need to work on developing. Jenny Campbell asked, I apologize if I missed this, but is this for RNs only, or would an LPN lead employee also qualify? This is an LPN supervisor role. So this is not RNs only, it's all nursing. And so LPN leads, this isn't really for charge nurses. So if an LPN lead is acting in roles similar to that of an assistant manager or a CSL, where they have responsibility for direct responsibility for staff and have direct reports themselves, then you might be able to use some of those competencies. But otherwise, back to the question about the educator, the 11 square and the AONE competencies and how those were created won't match out. So if it's more of a charge type of function where they're leading the clinical work, it's probably not as appropriate. And in that matter, too, we did state last year after this was created, even though it was based on AONE competencies with nursing in mind, if you have an assistant manager or a manager on your team that is not a nurse but leads a clinical area, those competencies do really align, and you can go ahead and use these tools with them. And really the outcomes that are expected are very similar. So if they are a leader that does lead a clinical area and you'd like to do that with them, we did find that was appropriate last year and did work. Okay, let me see. Okay, let's see. Shelley Anglin asks, I would like to begin grooming one of my RN3 nurses for a charge nurse role or other more advanced leadership. Would it be appropriate to use this tool for her even though she's not currently in formal leadership? Or is there a more appropriate tool for helping her grow? You know, this is a great tool to use. So the one thing that would be hard to do, Shelley, it would be to map her on the 11 square, but you can use, if you go to the AONE website, I believe they have one that is more of a charge nurse type of competency. So check out where you could get some of those and go ahead and use some of the principles, and also look at the pathway conversations and create a development plan for her. You can use all those other tools that are in the packet to go ahead and develop other people, because it's a great investment, and we definitely support doing that. The tools that we've developed so far aren't an exact match for that, but you could definitely tweak if you've got someone who has high potential like that you would like to help grow. Okay. So far, that's all of the questions coming in. We'll go ahead and give it another minute to see if we've got any other questions. Okay, and I'll give it another second, but just to close up, if there are no more that come up, we have recorded this webinar and we'll make it available for quick reference. Also, if there are any questions you guys have going through the process or need help remembering how to use that 11 square, or have a different situation that's unique and you need some guidance with that, I am one of your available resources, and if I can't help you with that in particular, we still have June Bowman and Pam Jones on the team ready and willing to help. So one of the three of us are happy to help with any of those. So, okay. All right, please send your emails in or give us a call if you have anything else come up. Thank you guys so much for coming, and I don't see any other open questions coming up. I will give it a minute before I close out the meeting, but thank you all, and we'll talk to you soon.